Good day, everyone, and welcome to Engineered Nigeria TV show from the stables of the foremost engineering institution in Africa, the Nigerian Society of Engineers. In this episode, we'll be discussing with Professor Bart Nnaji, a fellow of the Academy of Science and a fellow of Nigerian Academy of Engineering, and a commander of the Order of Niger. He is the chairman and CEO of Geometric Power Limited, ABA. We'll be discussing the theme, Energy Sector Reforms in Nigeria, Opportunities and Challenges. I am your host, Engineer Dr. Felicia Menna Agobata, Vice President Corporate Services of the Society. Join us and enjoy the show.
Bart Nnaji, the CEO of Geometric Power Plant, is a trailblazer in Nigeria's energy sector, driving innovation and spearheading transformative changes. Outstanding achievements in power generation, academia, public service, and global energy policy advocacy mark his journey. His passion for sciences and mathematics paved the way for his future in engineering. Seeking academic excellence, Nnaji pursued higher education abroad, obtaining a bachelor's degree in engineering in Nigeria and later earning a master's degree and a PhD in industrial and system engineering from Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University in the United States. His global recognition as an engineer and scientist results from his outstanding research and academic contributions.
I lived some time with my father and mother. Then at some other time, I went to live with my uncle, who was from the master teacher. That's what my parents wanted, and it was quite helpful because I became more disciplined in my approach to education, and did very well in primary school, secondary school, and then went to US to do my bachelor's, master's, and PhD. But what was interesting in between was that we ran into the war just before I went to secondary school. And so for 3 whole years, I did not, in fact, nobody went to school really in that area. So I didn't go to school. So when I got a chance to go back to school, it was like eating books. I was really consuming. When I went to university, I did my bachelor's in 2 years, 9 months, and my master's and PhD in another 2 years, 9 months. So I was in university for 5 years, 6 months total. That's how much I wanted to catch up, so to say. And I was happy to have been chosen at the University of Massachusetts, where I gained my full professorship there, and with tenure. And then after 13 years at the University of Massachusetts, I went to the University of Pittsburgh, where I had an endowed professorial chair in engineering, and also became head of U.S. National Science Foundation Center of Excellence in e-design. So, but also in between, when I was at the University of Massachusetts, I came back here to serve as Federal Minister of Science and Technology in 1993. When I came, there was no Ministry of Science and Technology. It had been abolished. And it was my lot to restart it. And I worked with the Attorney General then, Akpangbo, and we worked to set aside decree, make new decree to get the ministry restarted. So we had to stitch together the ministry that used to exist, the agencies that were part of the Ministry of Science and Technology before it was abolished. I had to negotiate with the ministers to give them back. But you won't believe it. They all agreed and gave back the agencies. I'm not sure that people would do it now, but they did give back. The Ministry of Science and Technology, the modern Ministry of Science and Technology, literally started in my hotel room in the Hilton. So we put them together, we put all these agencies together, using also the Science and Technology unit in the presidency. So we took that. There's this organization that was also operating at the time under Professor Ezekwe. What's the name of that organization again? Nasani, thank you very much. So we brought Nasani, and also Nasani, which was under the presidency. The fact that the head of Nasani was Professor Ezekwe even agreed to become part of Federal Ministry of Science and Tech was also quite unique at the time. So we put all this together, got office in the Federal Secretariat, new Federal Secretariat as it were at the time, and started. It was a very difficult period because we literally hardly slept in working to put this together. So that's how the Ministry of Science, the modern Ministry of Science. One of the things I wanted to do was to say that we should set it on a path where there should not be any more abolition. Because I realized that they abolished Science and Technology Ministry because they didn't know what it was serving in the country. So I set about getting my colleagues first and the cabinet to understand the import of science and technology, even literally drawing pictures for them that you go from basic research to the technology, and then to commerce, the products, and showing them that ultimately this country can become something that it desires to become by following this kind of path. And that's what all the other countries, the great countries of the world, have done, and that we can do it. Maybe I'm giving you a long history, maybe more than what you asked for. Anyway, more recently, of course, I was in the power ministry. After serving in America, working in America for all these years, I reached what I would characterize as a plateau in my life, which is I don't like being a university administrator. I had been offered, but I didn't want. What I wanted was to be in the trenches, doing research. And even if you look at what I'm doing now, it's been in the trenches, in the power sector. So I like doing research. I like innovation. I like coming up with ideas about how things work. And so I looked at what I was doing in America and I said, look, I think when I was in Ministry of Science and Tech, I recognized a very important need which is electricity, that without electricity we are not going to go anywhere. So let me go and see what I can do to help contribute my 2 cents in helping our nation. So I took a leave of absence from my university. No, actually, I took a sabbatical first, then a leave of absence following, to come and build the power company. There was no private power company when we started. It was just an idea that the country has to move to private sector investing in power. There's just no way the government can continue to operate the power sector the way it is. So that's why in 2000 we built a small power plant here in Abuja with an idea that actually I must say that it just happened in a way that we built a power plant to supply to NEPA electricity, and there was a substation there, and they domiciled the power in central area of Abuja, supporting the presidency, the NNPC, the police headquarters, all those places. And that the power was reliable for as long as the fuel was there. And because of the sort of people we're talking about taking the power, the fuel was there. So it proved to us that if you domicile the power, you don't put it on the national grid, it will be reliable as long as the fuel is there, as long as the technical skill is there to run the place. So that's how we decided to go for an expanded area, and that's how we went to Aba, so on. Well, when I came on board, we had roughly 2,000 megawatts of power. Even though installed capacity was over 10,000 megawatts. But the challenges had to do with natural gas, had to do with transmission, had to do with distribution infrastructure. And the unwillingness to stop holding fast to the power sector. The union people used to call it their patrimony, and we were trying to take their patrimony from them. So I first, there was an Electricity Act in 2005. That Electricity Power Sector Reform Act of 2005 was basically taken and put on the shelf somewhere, theoretically. So when the President Jonathan, talked to me about working to see if we can do something about this, the first thing we had to do was to take that act and just think of it as being ideas 10,000 feet in the sky, to bring it to 100 feet on the ground, so that people can touch and feel what you call power sector reform. And in order to do that, we had to look at who actually are aside from the consumers of electricity, but who can grow electricity? And we recognize that, yes, government can do something, but government will never have enough resources to grow electricity in Nigeria. And therefore you needed investments. But government has a key role to play. Government is the stimulant, the incentivizer of the people who will come to build. So that is to take that power sector reform and put it in a way that the community of investors will look at it and feel that it's a credible document, and that they have a place to go, and that the place where they can go, they will get confidence of government. So we then worked to produce a document, which is the reform agenda, and launched it. But so there are a number of things about that launch. We had to get key stakeholders, implementers, to come to Lagos for the launch of it. Then we said, look, if you're going to be doing this, people can't be just sitting and watching you say you're doing reform, because they would not be happy. You're doing reform, they don't even know what reform is. They've never done that. So you have to be showing that power can grow. So, but how can power grow? We already have installed capacity, but a lot of the units at the various power plants are not working. So we set about recovering the units at the various power plants. That's how there are three things about the power. You have installed capacity, you have available capacity, you have power and grid. That's how we were able to recover available capacity to about 7,000 megawatts. Available. That doesn't mean that they can go on grid. What are the things that can make them not go on grid? Two things, key. One is transmission, and the other is the fuel. Okay, so those two things we still don't have today. So, but what we said to do is, okay, let us improve as much as we can to show the people that power would be improving, and we were. I think anybody who was paying attention at that time would have noticed that power was really improving at that time as we were doing reform. In doing reform, one of the things that had to be done, I see a lot of talk about tariff. We said tariff has to be at a point where investors will want to invest, take the risk. And the tariff at the time was a uniform tariff, 6 naira per kilowatt hour. I believe that there was such a time. 6 naira per, although naira was a different naira at that time. I literally had to do a campaign, what amounted to a political campaign, with my colleagues. We would go to visit the emirs, the obas, the obis, and the political leaders of the nation, to convince them that this is important. It's very important to do, because nobody will invest in the Nigeria power sector unless we improve tariff. So the complication was that in January of 2012, there was mass protest over fuel subsidy. People, 2012, you probably remember that. And it was the same year that I wanted to implement tariff improvement. So you can imagine my challenge. Everybody, I would say, a lot of people ran away, including the people who were supposed to really do it. So we just went ahead and continued to campaign. So when we were ready, we wanted to have it come into force June 1, 2012. So I went to the president with a memo, and he reminded me of January. I said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes, Mr. President, there's nobody that will come here." He was courageous. He actually was courageous and agreed to sign off on it. But I did something, and that was that the people who everybody usually would fight for are the urban poor and road dwellers who are not usually able to afford. So I took the tariff from 6 naira per kilowatt hour to 4 naira per kilowatt hour. And that's where it has stayed till today. 4 naira per kilowatt hour. Why? Because the population, even though they are huge, the consumption of electricity is small. So it will not kill us to give them that. We can call it subsidy, wish, but most electricity distributors understand that is, we call it cross subsidy actually, which means that government is not paying the subsidy, but that the electricity distribution company is doing it. So that's my response to you. And what did I do? We did quite a lot in short order.
No, just
I would also tell you that we brought together really top quality professionals to work in the sector. But you know, those people, I started with Presidential Task Force. I was chairman. And actually, I must tell you, the president really wanted to see the power sector move forward. That task force was the working engine for change. Then the president would have every Tuesday at 2 o'clock what we called the Presidential Action Committee on Power meeting, which brought together key ministers, Controller General of Customs, just anybody that would have posed an impediment to progress would be in that room. And he would preside, and I will be the one providing what should be done on that day. Usually about an hour meeting, but very, very, very powerful meeting. So it will be the outcome of what the Presidential Task Force would have produced for that week. Will go to present and make requests or recommendations for what should be done. That's how some materials at the customs that had been languishing for many, many years got released, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of things. The Minister of Finance was there. Minister of National Planning will be there. All of them will be there. So, when you're talking about, if you're talking about like an emergency on something, that's what I see an emergency being. That you must bring in all the key actors in the same room and let them continue to ensure that whatever is decided will get done. So, privatization came about as a result of all this, because you had to now hand over the private sector, the generation and the distribution, but only to organizations that have two capacities: technical capacity and financial capacity. That's my own agenda, even though it ended up differently. Well, I think a lot of what I've talked about constitutes that. Well, there's something that the country needs to grow the generation. My own figure, and this is my own humble self, my own figure for how much power Nigeria needs today, and I don't mean tomorrow, is about 100,000 megawatts. We are 13,000 megawatts. If you go to calculate how much self-generation we do, you'll be amazed. Self-generation, that's not on the grid. A lot of the companies in Lagos are doing self-generation, and they generate a lot. All the cement companies, they're not, I don't know how many of them are taking power from the grid. They're doing self-generation. So we need a lot of power in Nigeria, but how can we grow the power? We grow the power by enabling private sector to invest in it. Because if you have government invest in any of the power projects, it takes a while. I can tell you, Kaduna Power Plant started around the time when I was in government. It's not done yet. Zungeru Power, it's been a while, 700 megawatts power plant. Mambila Power is over 40 years in planning. Okay, that's a big power plant, 3,050 megawatts. The infrastructure to take that power when it comes, it's not there in terms of transmission. But there are a lot. Would you know? Tomorrow, no, on Thursday, I'm giving a speech in Lagos. I'm keynote speaker at the American Business Council. That's what you're talking about is what I'm going to talk about. There is really, hydros contribute just 20%. Hydros, 20%. Thermal is 80%. The other sources are not in play yet. Which are the other sources? Renewable. So, the problem is that we're a developing country and we have to recognize it. The developed economies are thinking of energy security. We like to follow them. They're doing energy security, but they already have arrived. We have not. And so we're following them in not using our own natural resources the way we should. Coal is one. Natural gas we're using, but not enough. They want us to use wind. They want us to use solar. I call them, tree huggers. Sorry, but Nigeria should not be following tree huggers. Tree huggers, good huggers. Yes. Embracing the tree, saying the tree should allow them to stay. Yes. environment is very, very important to preserve. But look at what happened with Ukraine in the Ukraine war. Western Europe, Germany, UK, France, and so on, they were on the forefront of climate change initiatives. They had decommissioned a lot of their coal-fired plants and were on their way to just using wind, solar, hydro to power their economies, and natural gas. Would you know, they tell you that fossil fuel is the cause of the environmental problem. Natural gas is part of that fossil fuel, right? Let me use United States as an example. Today, after 30 years of COP, the COP Committee of the Parties of the United Nations, that's COP. The first one was held in 1995. This is the last one was 28th session of it in Dubai, right? So after more than 28 years of COP, well, there are targets to reduce temperature to 1.5 degrees centigrade. There was a rate attributed to how we should be investing in green energy, and to reach net zero by 2050. But as soon as the Ukraine war came, Germany was no longer getting gas, so they ran quickly back to coal-fired plants. A lot of European countries are on that. The US had done perhaps the most in reducing the use of coal. So they are now at about 16, just a little over 16% of their power coming from coal. But of course, 16% of power from the United States, you know how many millions of power that they generate. So 16% from coal is quite a lot. Yeah? Not even Africa is generating all of that, just from coal alone. So now, so 21% is from nuclear energy. Guess where the rest is coming from? About 60%. Fossil fuel. Gas, natural gas is the majority of it. So what I say to my country is, let's be energy security conscious. Let's not follow people. Let's do our own climate change initiatives the way it should support our development, our country's development. Let nobody cow us into doing something that will hurt the economy of our country. Let's try to achieve flare out completely. Nigeria has a target of 2030 for complete flare out at the oil production. That is good. Let's make sure we achieve that. But let's not let nobody tell us not to use natural gas. Let nobody tell us not to use coal. We may not get finance for coal-fired plants simply because they have ring-fenced that as something that they shouldn't have. But That's that. No, sorry. On the renewables, because it won't be complete without talking about renewables. There are a number of renewable solar power plants in development. That's okay. I think we can do something about solar in Nigeria, but it will not be base power. The base power will remain natural gas and hydro for quite some time. I have actually given you a little bit of background as to the concept which was demonstrated here in Abuja. But I felt that if you have industrial clusters, an industrial cluster doesn't have to mean a small place. It could be a city. It could be even a metropolis, could be an industrial cluster. A place like Lagos, for example, can be an industrial cluster. So you have a very clean working distribution infrastructure, and you build a power plant there and install. It's embedded power plant. It's not on a national grid. It's not getting affected by all the whims and caprices of the national network. Then you will tend to have reliable electricity as long as you have gas or the fuel. So we wanted in Aba to stimulate the industrial base of Aba. First, Aba is very close to the natural gas source. Literally, we were able to build 27-kilometer gas pipeline from Shell, a gas processing station, or what was Shell, now it's NNPC, to our power plant. And so it was just only 27 kilometers. We also took the distribution infrastructure and cleaned it up, invested more than 8 times what it cost to acquire it, which is actually what I wanted the buyers of distribution companies to do. So when I talk about technical capacity and financial capacity, that's actually what I meant. You don't just take the distribution company and continue to run it the way it was. You have to build infrastructure. For example, when we came into Aba, there were only 3 substations, 2 by 15 MVA each. We built 4 brand new ones. It's very expensive to do those things. If you go around the nation, there are not many discos that have built 1 substation. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. So, we went ahead to build the power station after a study of what Aba would need. We came to the conclusion that Aba would need just above 100 megawatts, and that so we got license for 188 megawatts, and that at peak load it would be closer to 130, 140 megawatts. Okay. So we have installed now 141 megawatts fully functioning, and of course the issue now is natural gas. You get it? So we are not now worrying about national grid transmission, because we have what we call sub-transmission, which is the local grid, and that once you continue to invest to improve it, then the system is going to work the efficiency, the privatization of discos was based on average technical, collection, and commercial losses. Okay, so you want to crash that. But when they were selling the discos, the ATC&C losses were close to, in some places 50%, some places 60%. You needed to bid on how you reduce it. But when you bid that say you're going to reduce it to say 15% or 10%, that is a tall order, because these things I'm talking about, investment in distribution infrastructure, investment in collection infrastructure, investment in commercial infrastructure would have to be there. Yeah. And metering, for example, you need to meter your customers. It takes a while to meter your customers. We've only taken over the distribution part of the business roughly about a year and a half now. And we have, if you go to the NEC website, you will see that we are not doing so badly in terms of metering, in terms of the performance. At least we're right there with everybody. So you see Abba Power. That's the distribution part of the business. Just in terms of structure, there are two companies. Actually, the Geometric Power that people hear about is a holding company. It doesn't have a license to do anything. It's a holding company. Its function is to develop power projects and invest in them. That's what it does. So it will be investing in different companies. So the generation company bears partly the name of Geometric Power. It's called Geometric Power Abba Limited. It's a separate company from Geometric Power Limited. And so that owns the generation and the gas pipeline. Then you have the distribution part of the business, which is APL Electric, popularly called Abba Power. So Abba Power also has license for distribution. All these got their licenses about the same time. Gencos and Discos got their licenses. They're about the same. It's just that Nigeria met the project, and it took quite a while for us to come alive. To be top quality power company in the world. No, we're not talking about here. Whatever we do, we try to do it at a world standard. And whereby you begin to measure things like the frequency of power cuts, and the duration when it cuts. I can tell you that I'm coming straight from Abba this morning. The power plant is on. Once the power plant is on, there's no power cut. The only place where you can have trip will be at the feeders. If like during rain, you can have maybe poles falling or some tree branch touching the wires. So there are things that can trip certain parts of your network. That's the thing, but not the power plant. Although sometimes you can actually go back to the power plant and short circuit. It has happened a few times. So, but basically, we want to come to the point where you have stability. We even have SCADA at the power plant, which shows that you're able to detect where things are, where you have issues on the network. And that's something that the country is trying to install. That's Siemens. When you hear about the Siemens project, that's what part of the Siemens project. So expansion, we like to be expanding there to ensure that there will always be power adequacy in Aba metropolis, no matter how much it grows. Okay, Aba is the place where we serve is 9 local governments out of Abia State's 17. So it has more than 3 million people living there, and 4,000. It covers 4,000 square kilometers. So within this space, whatever amount of power that is needed, we will supply and continue to grow. That's on Aba. If you look at developed economies of the world, they may not be as big as this space I'm talking about, this major city, but the amount of power that they consume will be far bigger than what Nigeria consumes within that particular metropolis. Go check, not even big cities like New York, just go and check how much power would Washington DC consume, how much power would Chicago consume, those kind of places. And you'll be amazed. So we expect that that cluster will continue to grow as a major industrial base part of this nation. And what we would like to see is for other clusters to crop up in the same guise. It would be Lagos, Kaduna, Kano, and so on. And it requires that there be infrastructure that will provide the fuel. Understand? Infrastructure to provide the fuel.